Colonel Tony Nyam joins us this morning. He is a retired Army officer. Thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, I mean, you just saw the recap. Since Chibok girls, Dapchi girls, Kankara boys, and it seems the list goes on and on. Do you see a grand plan somewhere, or is just one of those things?
I think we are really in a difficult situation, in that what is most worrying, Kaduna is where we have the heaviest military presence. Kaduna is the military base of Nigeria. And all around Kaduna, there's kidnapping, even close to the Air Force base, close to the airport. It's really bad. And of course, we've had before, between Kaduna and Abuja, there's been kidnapping. Things have gotten so bad. All I can say is that I think we need to thank God that the president seems to have woken up from, will I say, sleep, as evident by the sudden steps he's taken recently. And his NSA, who I have always criticized before, seems also to have woken up to his responsibility. What is lacking is that the mistake I see happening is that they are thinking changing service chief is a rejigging of national security architecture. I'm going by the NSA's words. Changing personnel is not a system change. Going by the old strategy which was in place before this new service chief is still for me a problem. I think what needs to be emphasized is that the challenges we are facing are purely non-state armed entities or personnel. Their modus operandi is unorthodox. It is not the usual conventional warfare tactics. Even though you're using the armed forces, who are doing their very best. We thank the president for changing the service chiefs. These chaps who are on board are doing their very best. Anybody can see that. But then, the challenge they face is much more than conventional warfare they are used to. Secondly, I also commend the NSA for showing that funds that were given seems not to have been, will I say, they still yet to be accounted for, because the new service chiefs need all the resources to do their work.
So, Colonel, if you're saying that all these guys are doing the level best that they can do at this time, how come it would seem like the kidnappings are unending? And it's not just one or two persons, it's in droves of hundreds over and over again. I shudder at the thought that there is no intelligence to tell us that this is going to happen.
No, you see, for years in this program, I remember some time ago with Mokwe Ogun, I've been saying that the military we have in terms of force levels is too low. We have less than 200,000 soldiers for a country as populated as Nigeria. And the level of security, the insecurity we have is all over the place. So when I say the service chiefs who have come in are doing their best, is that with what they have, they are doing their best. Where I've always been blaming, that leadership has been failing, that is at the highest level. It's a time that they should have taken. I always use the example of General Gowon. He came in, an army less than 8,000 people. In less than 6 months, he built an army of over 200,000. In less than 6 months, from 8 months. And what did he do? Apart from building up the army, he also ensured something that's been lacking. He ensured that the locals of the different areas played a part. I am from Niger Delta. If you check, 3 Marine Commando, which Colonel Adekunle commanded, all his troops were people from the locals. And that's why...
Go on angle that you mentioned, you know the peculiarity of the time that he came on.
Yes.
He had a civil war in his hands.
Yes,
so,
which is bigger. Which was a bigger war. But,
exactly.
but he rose up to the task. You see, for a long time, until the last 3 weeks, General Muhammad Buhari, like I've been saying, was not reacting to the situation.
In no way trying to defend the current administration.
Yes.
The Gowon administration had a lot of resources at its disposal.
Not at all.
The challenge... Okay, explain.
Not at all.
Because you remember it was at that time that the government of the day was quoted to have said that we have too much money, we don't know what to do with it.
Not at all, please. Let's not disturb. If you remember, because he had a very good finance minister, Awolowo used his skills in, first of all, there was a declaration of war, which was not declared. In terms of, by declaring the war, they put in the machinery and the laws to control the war. We have been in a war which has not been declared. So, secondly, we've not got the real people who can advise the president, as Gowon had. Gowon knew his shortcomings, right. So he got in people like Chief Awolowo. He had a very good Attorney General, Tesmile Elias. He had Enahoro, and also he had the British who gave him access to international.
Speaking about the point you were making about this being unorthodox,
yes.
You know, but we've seen several patterns of how these people operate.
Yes.
So to what extent can we still keep saying that it is unorthodox? Is it that because it is unorthodox, they can't get results, or what?
I've explained over and over that the current armed forces is low, very low in manpower. When we say the word unorthodox, I have said it over and over that the training an average soldier has is to fight conventional warfare. It's not to fight bandits or to fight that. Ordinarily, in other countries, they have forces. In other words, you have the army, which is the last line of defense. Then they have first line of defense, which would be the locals. And also they have the gendarmeries or National Guards. You would have seen, if we had similar things in America, it is National Guard who will be facing who will be doing the fight. The National Guard are locals of that area. So what am I saying? In the areas like Kaduna now, it is the locals who should have been used much more than soldiers coming in who are overstretched. Before they react, the bandits have moved.
Well, Colonel,
excuse me.
Spoken largely about the military.
Yes.
Saying 200,000 is not enough. But don't forget, we have the police, 350,000 strong.
Yes.
And, I mean, over the course of this conversation, you talked about the last line of defense, which is meant to be the military, the first line of defense, the locals, the gendarmeries, but then the police, 350,000 of them. Why is it that when we have these conversations, we don't quite reference the police? Because are we saying that, well, the police should not be reckoned with, or they're not doing as well, so let's just focus on the ones we feel can deliver? What exactly is the role of the police here?
The police, as you know, are law enforcement agencies on the main. They are a civilian arm. They are not a military arm. I don't know why we don't get it. The police are there to deal with a situation, but when it gets to what they call grievous emergencies, it's beyond the police. What we have now, the police are not trained to go into the bush and take on an army of irregular armies. The police are not trained, they're not trained in that respect. This is why I'm saying that you need to train the locals, just like General Gowon did. Officers were trained in 3 months. people like Tanko Ayuba, if you've heard, they were given what is called emergency commission. They were trained only in 3 months as officers. And soldiers were trained, there were depots all over the place, training soldiers and pushing them. Adekule took soldiers from Port Harcourt, Cross River, and then went on the fight. And it's not new. In the Second World War, the British did the same. They created what they call homeland defense, and they trained people hastily. What we need now is that we need Buhari to be supported. And by the way, what I see is that the only attempt the NSA is waking up to his task. Some people are trying to indirectly, I will say this, people like Garuba Shehu, who I call Gabe Shehu, is on trying to undermine NSA, who is rising up to the task. I see Mungunu rising up to the task. He's waking up from the task. The president himself is waking up to. But people like Garuba Shehu are not helping the issue because they are the voice of the cabal who have been misleading the president.
Colonel, I know, yeah, we can voice our concerns, but let's just try and respect those persons and not attack their personality, especially when you reference something about, I mean, how do we justify or how do we substantiate some of those claims? Yes, it's trying time for also, but as much as possible, let's just stay on those issues. I think, now speaking about the military, I mean, yes, who you know better, and then we equally do have another guest spokesperson. He's a former spokesperson in the army, so you should know where could these loopholes be. Well, good to see you, SK Usman, Colonel. And Mark, let's hand this over to you.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, he is retired Brigadier General, so let me quickly correct that before we move on now. But you have listened to some of the issues that have been going on. The strikes now, it would seem, are getting more frequent, and it would seem that the bandits are becoming more emboldened, so much so that we're getting it almost every 3 days now. One was foiled yesterday, and the last one happened on Friday. Before that, it was last week Sunday, and it would seem that on a weekly now, we're getting it more frequently. What do you think is causing this issue of being emboldened on the part of the bandits?
Well, actually, this wave of kidnappings all over the country, particularly in the northwestern part of the country, is worrisome and disturbing, and
particularly on schools and institutions.
Exactly, that is what I'm coming to. And every right-thinking Nigerian should be disturbed about these happenings for the obvious reason that it is the most vulnerable of the society. Talking about our children in school that are being, abducted or kidnapped, as the case may be, and disrupting the educational, pursuit or system. Now, going back to the reasons, I think there are quite a lot of reasons why these kind of things are, happening. There could be remote and immediate causes. And if you are talking about remote causes, really, it has to do with right from 1999, when we have this present dispensation of democracy, and thankfully it is still ongoing and it will continue to go, we ought to have understand that democracy requires a lot of things, in the sense that we have to strengthen institutions and establish structures that will really, anticipate some of these problems that we're having. And unfortunately, we tend to, negate, good governance, because to a large extent, this is one of it, because you look at the infrastructural level, the educational level, and the level of, the relationship between those that have and those who do not have, and the economic disparity. So a lot of people might be tempted to go into criminal activities. That is one. Secondly, there were conflicts elsewhere, and we played the ostrich, not knowing that it will have some effect on our society. Take, for instance, what happened in Libya and Mali. There, eventually, it gave credence to proliferations of small and medium arms in the society, because basically, what makes the difference is the issue of AK-47. you know, we tend to allow, you know, weapons to move into the Nigerian society.
And that's the physical AK-47.
Exactly.
Not a figure of speech.
Not figure of speech, because invariably somebody who do not even know his religion, somebody who is not educated, he have access to AK-47. Why didn't we preempt and anticipate this so that we can stem the tide of proliferations of weapons, so that these criminals elements will not disturb the society the way they do? And I made mention of the poor governance and poor infrastructure. And now let's look at it. We have 3 tiers of government: the federal, state, and local government system. With due respect, which local government is working now? You know, it's supposed to be the buffer, and there should have been, you know, relationship between the society as a whole and the governance system. What is that relationship? Now, going back again to these issues, what is the level of security education?
Well, just before we get there, you mentioned 2 key things. Now, you've talked about, one, that we should build structures and institutions that can stand, that could help with the situation. What it means is that, one, we lack those kind of structures and institutions which you're referring to. I'd like you to shed a bit more light on that. But the second thing which you've also pointed out is the fact that we played the ostrich when Libya and you know, a lot of other conflicts were happening around our region, North Africa, coming also down to the Sahel. Wondering, you know, because there was a lot of analysis in that period when Libya was going down. We saw it coming. Why do you think that Nigeria went to sleep? Or was it that we were powerless, or simply did not have the capacity to be able to stop what we knew was going to be a fallout of the collapse of Libya, for instance?
It's neither of the two. I don't believe that Nigeria doesn't have the capacity, neither are we powerless. I think it's the ability, or rather the understanding of the fact that things have changed. You have to be realistic. Nobody thought 25 years ago Nigeria could be in this quagmire, security-wise. But it is sad realities. Initially, we do see it on the screens of television, you know, trouble there, trouble there. But you start anticipating, you start preparing because of the unforeseen. And that is where the issue of building institutions and structures come into play. Now, let's look at the level of investment in the security architecture over the last 20 years, particularly the policing system. No country exists without a good and effective policing system. To what extent have we invested? You know, so that we should not be having the problem we are having. Now, with due respect, every now and then you hear the military. Military should have been the last, you know, people to be called in. We have seen it, what happened just recently in the United States of America when there was a problem. The military was called in. Immediately, they nipped it in the bud, and you no longer hear about the military. Other structures have taken over. So these are the issues that we should take into cognizance. Then the other issue is the issue of, you know, governance. Governance in the sense that we should have strengthened the local government system, let it be independent, I mean autonomous, in terms of funding, in terms of whatever they need to succeed, so that they are closer to the people. They knew, take for instance, all these forests where these criminal elements have an age belongs to a particular district, a particular local government, a particular ward. What is the relationship? Especially at the state level, this, you know, the security architecture, you know, that comprise of all the stakeholders, the people themselves, the traditional institutions, those statutorily allocated with tasked with the responsibility of securing the people.
General, you retired not too long ago from the military, from the ranks of the military, and some of these problems were already there. I recall that on more than one occasion we've had to talk about security in the country. Even more than once we've had to talk about internal security and who should be responsible. The fact that the military is involved in almost 27 states in different operations across the country was a sign, was something to worry about. What is the quality, one, of conversation which you're privy to? I'm not asking you to divulge the conversations, of course, but what is the thinking in the circles, in the military circles, especially when you're aware of what the challenges are, to, one, push for change, and also get the conversation, get people to feel the urgency of the security that we're in, the security situation that we're in?
Yeah, basically, I think the military, even though I have retired almost 2 years ago, I think it's the same. They are not looking for much. First and foremost is the understanding of the Nigerian society, the circumstances under which they operate. Because the military service is a unique thing in the sense that it is the only profession that, first and foremost, the starting point is that you are ready to sacrifice your life for the well-being of the society. Therefore, you require all those things that will enable you to succeed so that you can defend the territorial integrity of this country. And of course, when called upon in aid of civil authority, and we have seen it manifest in the various internal security challenges we are having, in which the military have been called upon, disaster management and emergency situation, you know. So basically, these are the issues. So when it comes to nitty-gritty of it, is to empower the military commanders with basic things. What are these things? You know, kittens, sound administration, you know, when it comes to pay and allowances, logistics, you know. And given the fact that the situation that we are dealing with, unlike, you know, conventional warfare, you know, unless a terrorist is carrying a gun, you will not even know, because he mingled with the society. So there should have been understanding when there were issues of collateral damages that you need to assist the military with timely and accurate information so that they can be able to isolate and neutralize these criminal elements, particularly the terrorists. So, and it goes this, it goes the same way with the bandits we are having, because the military, they are not magicians, so to speak. They require information. They rely on the society. They rely on the strategic directions of the leadership, you know, to enable them to succeed. To what extent are we doing that? You see a situation whereby people tend to highlight, you know, the criminal activities of the terrorists as against the military, you know, hammering on perceived weaknesses and all the rest, and it doesn't go down well with the military, especially with their morale. Because I cannot imagine myself sacrificing for the well-being of the society, and yet you keep on abusing and denigrating me. My children are watching. My, you know, relations are watching. So invariably, I have nothing to tell the society that actually it is worth military cooperation. So basically, there is issue of, you know, understanding, continuous support. Then, of course, the strategic directions, those in authority should assist the military in terms of timely releases, you know, appropriation, and ensuring that whatever they require are given. And of course, you have to also give key performance indicators, give them timelines so that they can be able to achieve. There is no system that is perfect. Whenever there are mishaps or misunderstandings there and then, let there be that kind of decorum and understanding so that they can continue to do that. Basically, so these are the requirements of the military, and the thinking has not changed.
General, I was talking about the conversations in terms of looking out for the problems that the country could be facing ultimately in terms of security. I don't know how to put that now. Will it be strategic foresight or thinking about planning ahead about security challenges that could come up as a result of what is happening externally around Nigeria, or even internally, things that are cropping up based on intelligence that is received and perhaps shared among security agencies? How serious is that? And, you know, are people usually, are the soldiers, military men usually aware, or do they take it for granted when some of this information comes their way?
I don't think they take it for granted. I think they have always been on their toes, and you can see it by the way they conduct themselves whenever they are having field training exercises, or even in the course of operations that have been involved all over. But beyond that also, the training institutions of the military are daily working. And as a matter of fact, just just a few years ago, beyond a strategic level, there was so much gap between, those middle cadre officers that go to the Armed Forces Command and Staff College up to the time they go to the National Defense College for their strategic courses. The services have created various war colleges. The Army has one, the Navy has one, and the Air Force has one. It's basically to tell you that they are not taking things for granted. They paint scenarios, they invite, knowledgeable people to interface with them, not just necessarily about security issues within the country, but globally. And I know for sure you just have to be up and doing, even at the National Defense College or the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, about current affairs. And the current affairs does not even stop with what is happening within the country or the region or the sub-region, but globally, so that you can be able to have a fair understanding of what is going on and to what extent it has affected you. And more so, you should understand that things that are happening elsewhere has the capacity to affect you, either directly or indirectly. We have seen it.
So the question is, how is that translating into what we're seeing? Unless you're going to tell me that Nigerians, that things could have been a lot worse than what we're currently seeing. People who are saying, I mean, you've just said on this program that 25 years ago we did not think that we would be at this point. A lot of people did not anticipate this coming. When we heard of the Chibok girls kidnap, a lot of people found that very strange. In fact, a lot of people still found it very difficult to believe that it was possible that 300 and how many girls could be kidnapped in one night. And then now it would seem that we're seeing it more and more on a weekly basis. So, I mean, there are huge questions as to how is this possible in Nigeria?
To buttress what you are saying, even I was even writing an article some time back. I said, well, after Kankara, what happened? But surprisingly, after Kankara, we had Kagara, we had Kaduna, and just God save us, we would have had one in Ikara and elsewhere. So to what extent are we learning lessons? If you look at the visuals of those people that kidnapped those forestry institutions, mechanization institutions in Kaduna, you look at the background, you look at their disposition in terms of equipment, in terms of the kind of uniform they wore and the way they are, molesting those people. So you begin to ask yourself, why? Are they looking for ransom, or they are there to dehumanize people? And what is the reasons? People should have been thinking that, look, what will happen to our school system maybe in 10 days, 20 days, 1 year, 20 years to come? But it seems as if we are not learning lessons. And it is not because of the lack of capacity, but it's simply that I don't know whether it is a Nigerian thing with some people, that they tend to pretend and assume that things will not happen, that, resign to their fate. Otherwise, steps would have been taken. When Kankara happened, Yobe State decided to close school and Kano and to some extent Zamfara. But Jengebe happened. You see, these are the things that what should have been done, because there is every likelihood these things might occur. And we know, given the recent happenings, by the, the shuttling of the cleric, that these people are not faceless. They have a base. To what extent have we reached out, either through kinetic or non-kinetic means? Now we have proliferations of these people. People have decided.
Are you suggesting that, hold on, just before you continue, are you suggesting that perhaps schools should have been shut down in Kaduna as well?
Not exactly, but you should take proactive measures. Take, for instance, bulk of these schools, they lack basic infrastructures. They don't even have perimeter fences. People come in. What is the structure? I mean, what is the security architecture? What is the relationship? Take, for instance, let's say a boarding school, either for girls or for boys, the duty master, what is his role? What is the relationship between the school itself, authority, with the security architecture within the local community, the vigilante, the DPO, the SSS representative, the traditional institutions.
In question here, not making a case for anyone, but last week Sunday, the perimeter fence of the airport staff quarters was breached there was a perimeter fence. It was breached. The school, the forestry school that was attacked is a federal institution.
The fence was also breached.
The fence was also breached. So does it really make any difference whether or not
it makes a lot of difference
if they are breaching fences and
if we have early warning systems? These people do not come from the sky. And in any case, whenever there is a case of abduction, beyond the abductors, there are other middlemen in between. Informants.
Let's quickly flip this to Lagos. I think my colleagues have questions. Gentlemen.
Well, yes, indeed. Just to follow up on what we heard Brigadier General Osman say, could you explain to us, because we've heard politicians use the same word too, they talk about kinetic and non-kinetic. Could you shed some light on what that entails?
Well, kinetics is basically a military or security term, you know, that is talking about, when you say kinetic, you are talking about usage of military might, the coercive, you know, elements. And the non-kinetic elements are those aspects that are humanitarian in nature. So it's better as kind of a balancing act between the carrot and the stick. So there are situations where it requires the military might or the security forces might, and there are situations where you have to, you know, tarry and use the humanitarian aspects, you know.
All right. Okay, Colonel, let me bring this back to you, because just before we toss to Abuja, you did allude to the NSA, who has a crucial role here, seems to have found his voice. He's speaking a lot more now. He's saying things that were contrary to what was happening before, talking about we shouldn't be negotiating. That shows that we're weak. What is really going on at the moment?
First of all, one must commend President Muhammadu Buhari, who I have been very critical. You remember, first, he was, he indirectly, before the NSA spoke, did not like Shegumi's line of negotiating with the bandits. It's true. Two, he also, the shoot at sight, even though I will reward it differently, I will say shoot those carrying AK-47 who refuse to be disarmed, not to shoot anybody. I would have rewarded. Those are two signs showing that Buhari, who has never always talked about these AK herdsmen, is saying shoot them at first sight if you see them in the forest. So, in other words, I think President Muhammadu Buhari is becoming the General Buhari I knew before. But I do hope they will allow him be, rather than taking him back to this issue where they can take advantage of. On the question you are asking, as to the NSO is waking up to its responsibility. The NSA's office, you know, if you look at the provision of the Constitution, it says government is to provide welfare and security. Security is the hard military. Welfare is the soft power. What has been lacking so far, which I think the NSA is now trying to address, is that there is a need for political re-engineering, economic re-engineering to help the war effort. Like what did Gowon did, who we can learn from. Gowon, one of the key things he did, apart from I will help him to change the currency, the financial strategy to change the currency. Gowon did what you may call restructuring. What did he do? He found that he need to break up the former East. He now created new states and gave the non-Igbos a voice, and then he also used them in their defense of their locality. So my emphasis is this: we need to bring in the local people. Has been exhibited recently by the OPC in the arrest of Wakil, because this is a man who has been mystified. They demystify that.
Okay, you know, from what you say, it appears as though there seems to be some power play going on up there. Because, sure. I mean, for certain things to have changed, the service chiefs have changed, NSA speaking against negotiating with bandits. So what is the assurance that, look, this certain group, if they've been ousted from the scheme of things, won't fight back to the extent that they will impede whatever plan or progress the current team want to put in place?
Good question. you see, all along, and this, the NSO made a mistake, equating changing service personnel with rejigging the national security architecture. What is necessary now is to follow up with the national security architecture to be redesigned to meet the challenges. It's well known that war is changed in the last, since 9/11. Since 9/11, non-state armed actors are much more prevalent. And I see that in the foreseeable future, we're going to have wars that will be not Ghana attacking us, not Cotonou attacking us, but we'll continue having what we're having now. So we need to have a strategy that addresses that. And that strategy has to have a strand by having, we need to do more on unconventional warfare. Now, a terminology was misused, and I thought, and I've said it before, when they said, when the governor of Borno was calling for mercenaries, I said, no, you don't call for mercenaries. But that is not to throw away the idea. The idea is this: to fight unconventional warfare, you need what are called special operation forces. They are not, the Americans, you have the US Delta Force, you have the US SEALs, the British have the SAS, they have the special boat, the Pakistanis have their force. These are the people who are trained to fight this kind of fight we're fighting. In other words, they can do what OPC is doing, but better.
So, from the results you're seeing, I mean, the president has said, shoot at sight. And then he said, this will be the last time this will happen. And then several other measures. Who, from what we're seeing now, which group of those engaged in the power play do you think have got the president's ears now?
I think for a change, let me put it this way. I think from my readings, I think those who mean well for the president, those who want the president to have a legacy, are the ones who are coming up now, and I hope they allow them. And of course, I would say includes Aisha Buhari, and I think the chief of staff to the president, and I also think that the DG SSS is also for the president. I also think that those at the background who are powerful, the controller of customs and the minister of education. And of course, the in between this is what has happened. Attorney General Malami bringing Bawa is also a good sign, because the Bawa seems a good fresh. You see, some of us think that when we see people from the northwest or northeast who are brilliant, we admire them. And the presentation by Bawa is impressive to anybody. The new look of the Mongonu is also impressive. We should stop pulling down people who are brilliant from the northwest or northwest as Sanusi was moved from the scene.
Well, Colonel, so as it stands now, I mean, as we are talking, there are students still in captivity.
Sure.
In Kaduna State,
sure.
I believe that's where they are. And don't forget, over the weekend, the stories we got, 6 people, same members of a family, sure, were killed in Wasimi. We had gunmen opening fire on a moving vehicle, killing one, also not far from that area. And I mean, I could go on and on. Different stories around different parts of the country of this breakdown in security. So this is something we see every day. But the question is, for this to have lasted this long, looks like it's a business. It's lucrative because, I mean, why else would this keep continuing if it is not lucrative? So it appears as though it's even beyond the kidnappers or the bandits that are making a kill from this. Are we missing that angle also? Do we have all that information such that, as we look at the kinetic, as they say, we also look like at the economic angle to this?
You see, Nigeria generally has become, in most areas, for a long time, even the military were affected by these transactional tendencies. People want to make money. I think that is part of it. But I think once you allow the locals to be involved, take for example, what is happening in Ekiti. If Ekiti, you had people who were armed and trained in Ekiti land, they would defend their land better than an outsider. And an outsider too who is stretched. The mentality of these forces of occupation coming in is also there. If you see recently you would have heard that people are accusing the police of being biased. Of course, they've been biased until their own people are now affected in the northwest and northeast. Now people are rising up. Before, it was always in the Igbo land that police will do things they get away with. Then in Lagos, because Lagos is lucrative, they post people here to make money. Now the trouble is now much more at the back in the northwest and northeast. So they themselves are now getting the bite of what has been happening. So for me is that, please, if you watch, the civilian joint task force are very instrumental in helping the military to make the success they're making in Borno right now. So we need to engage. I am suggesting there's a need for, at the local level, self-defense forces. At the state level, the equivalent of National Guard or the gendarmeries, who are not controlled from Abuja.
You said something earlier about the first line of defense being the locals,
sure,
and the last line of defense being the military.
Yes.
Where is the police?
Sorry?
Where is the police?
Where's the police?
The police.
The police.
Yeah.
The police, I said, first line of defense. Then second line of defense. Second line is gendarmeries or National Guard. The police are not for defense, my brother. You see, I've been repeating this. The police are for enforcing the law in towns and urban or rural or a cop in a village. They are not for going to the bush to fight people. America is a good example to look at. In America, they have the National Guard.
So just a moment. So clearly, if we are going to strengthen that first line of defense, then we should be having certain specific conversations with the locals,
yes,
especially those at the borderlines.
Sure. Not the borderline, okay, all local governments, because crisis can start internally. It can start in Lagos, in Mushi.
Okay.
The local Mushi boy knows the trouble if you involve him.
So who should be playing the role of engaging with the locals? Who's supposed to be tasked with that one?
Now, once you come up from this sense of over-centralized national security, the national security architecture I'm suggesting is that the NSA should design a national security architecture which has all these levels. That's one. Secondly, I remember the Mokpe asking General Usman the question, and he was talking about National Defense College, War College, and all that. What is lacking in Nigeria is that there are no independent think tanks. You see, if you depend on, nobody will write, in National Defense College will write anything that would offend Buhari. But you need independent think tanks. In the UK, they have independent think tanks. In America, they have.
Independent think tank that will play the role of taking it of engaging with the locals. I just want to know, should that be a state government, federal government, or the NSA? You
see, the independent think tank will, you see, because they are independent.
Okay.
You see, what I see is now is the boys want to protect their jobs.
Okay.
You see the police all along fighting against state police. They want to keep on. Now, independent person would now give advice to the NSA in a much more objective way.
Okay, all right. Now, General Usman, of course, this is coming back to you now. Makwe, you want to take that up?
Well, General was just answering the question behind the scenes, and you're making reference to NIPS in Kuru, and I was making the point that that's a national think tank.
Yeah, exactly.
Not an independent think tank.
Yeah, exactly. You see, the whole idea is that there has never been any think tank that is independent of the government. In Nigeria, we have the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru, Plateau State, which I am a proud product of it, and I know they do marvelously well. And thankfully, even the present course, which is Senior Executive Course 43, now they have decided that they have had enough of these recommendations that have not been implemented. Now, their theme for this year is to dust out that 40 years of work so that we can be able to represent it, so that Nigeria can move forward. And going back, I was privileged to go to United States of America. We have had interface with the Atlantic Council. Agreed they are independent, but honestly, the composition spoke of, people in government. Either they are special advisors to the president or members of the parliament, or professors in institutions. The same thing with Royal United Society of United Kingdom and that of India. But the only thing is that there should be synergy of effort and coordination between the government, because all these recommendations that have been sent to the government, they should be able to deal with it. And here, even in Nigeria, we have the Nigerian Army Resource Center. The Resource Center deals with issues of national defense and security. And I know, if not because of COVID-19, every month there is this monthly lecture series which is open to all Nigerians. Resource persons come from various parts of the world, and recommendations are made in which the government, is informed. And sometimes actions are being taken, like the proliferation of drugs, forensic investigations, so many issues. So it is not question of having a think tank. We have them. But taking advantage of it, utilizing those recommendations, and again, possibly in addition to that think tank, it is the issue of its intelligentsia, and that is why you have the civil society organization, like before becoming the chief of staff to the president, Professor Gambari had the Savannah Center for Democracy, and there are so many others of that nature that coordinate, and make recommendations to the government. So basically, these are the issues that we should take into cognizance. The bottom line is that the government should be listening and taking those recommendations with every seriousness, so that Nigeria could be better off.
It's very worrisome when you say that, the mandate for those who are currently at Kuru, that's NIPS Kuru, is to dust out, 40 years of work, so that, something can be done about implementation. Some people will say, indeed, that's where the gap is. Not because we lack ideas, but it will seem that we've just not taken anything seriously enough to be able to implement it. What do we need to fire up those in power to be able to take up some of the recommendations that we have seen and heard, even from informal discussions that we see around us, formal discussions that take place in conferences? Abuja, for a long time, has been, the center where a lot of conferences take place. I'm sure some of them to urge government on. What do you think needs to be done to push those in power to say, look in this direction, and see what it is that you can do, to help stop some of these challenges that we're facing? Because as a matter of fact, people are worried.
Yeah, I think what needs to be done is constructive engagement. We don't lack ideas. We have plenty of them. And I know that...
How do we constructively engage? Who are we constructively engaging?
Well, there are institutions. There are institutions and there are procedures and mechanisms that we really need to pay attention to. And I can give you an example. Way back in 2018, I was privileged to be a member of Senior Executive Course 40, of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. And the theme for our course then was strengthening internal security framework in Nigeria, community policing. And for 1 year, we sat in Kuru, studied, and we visited all the strategic institutions that had to do with national security in this country, talking about the police, DSS, everything. And then we visited some states of the Federation, I think 12 of them, and 6 African countries, then 6 other countries beyond the African continent, and we made recommendations. And in the course of study and all the rest of the things, we brought in best practices elsewhere, particularly as it pertains, internal security framework and community policy. And we suddenly found out, actually, apart from there is one other constitutional requirement or structure. Take, for instance, the police council, the composition of which involves even the state governors. But the council have not been sitting. Let's even look at it. During 1999 to date, I don't think that council has sat more than 4 or 5 times. And the only item on the agenda was consideration of considering the appointment of Inspector General of Police, where there are other things that need to be, considered. Now, the issue of community policing that was launched over 13 or 14 years ago during President Obasanjo's regime, it was not given the impetus. But 2018-19, there seems to be a renewed impetus based on those reports, and we keep on doing this, reminding the government so that it can, get things right. Because these things have been found to be working, because there is no way you can deal with these security situations if you do not involve all the stakeholders in this Nigerian society. And going back, you look at the national security strategy, which gives, outline roles and responsibilities. But the problem is, who is coordinating it, and to what extent, you have the key performance indicators, either on quarterly basis, on the monthly or yearly basis. And look at, go back to freedom of information.
We could keep going back, but we have to move forward right now, and we have to wrap up. Well, key questions: who is coordinating and who is ensuring that their key performance indicators, and some of the performance is what Nigerians are assessing this morning, especially when you keep hearing that people are being kidnapped from our institutions. Something to really worry about. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Brigadier General, retired Brigadier General Sani Usman is former Army officer and former spokesperson of the Nigerian Army. Well, let me flip this to Lagos now so we can also wrap up the guest there.
Yes, well, Colonel Tony Nyam, so many questions. Questions one would have loved to ask, but we're completely out of time. We have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Colonel Tony Nyam is a retired Army officer. Thank you so much.